We do sell lady slippers. That's the second easiest to grow. We don't do cymbidiums because they require temperatures at night somewhere in the 45-degree area, and you can't put the two of those together. The nighttime temperatures, this can get down to 55, and it's fine, doesn't hurt. So we really just recently turned on the heat and turned it on at about 52 to 55 degrees, and then they're doing fine, as you can readily see. We find that for the bang for the dollar, that the Phalaenopsis give you a lot more and bloom longer. This plant here has been in bloom now, full bloom for 2 weeks already. They last sometimes in full bloom as much as 2 months to 2.5 months. So what the rule of thumb that I do is we count the buds and multiply by 5. It takes 5 days for each bud to completely deploy and make a show. And if you count the buds and so on and so forth, my goodness, before it ever gets into full bloom, you're looking at 35, 40, 45, 50 days. These are all first bloom seedlings. This is the first time for these plants to bloom. As they get older, they reach their maturity usually 4 to 5 years after they first bloom. And that means that the plant can produce 2 and 3 flower spikes with anywhere from 30 to 40 blooms, and some of them even more than that. I'm sure you've seen pictures of these enormous flower spikes coming. Well, those plants are 5 to 6 to 7 years old. It takes that. These plants are working themselves to death to do 6 to 8 to 10 flowers, okay? And that's first bloom seedling. How old is the plant? 3.5 years of age already. We start them off from seed, and the seed is face powder fine. It has to be sown under sterile conditions in a laboratory, which is the building next to the greenhouse. And we sow them there, and we do a primary or a mother flask. I do 4 or 5 mother flasks because the seed pods from an orchid plant are face powder fine, and therefore there can be a few hundred to 2 or 3 million of them. We don't sow all of them. I usually make about 3 or 4 or 5 mother flasks, so that if I make a mistake, at least ways I save 1 or 2 or 3 of them. Then 6 to 8 months later, I do a primary replate, and then from the primary, I do another primary. All I'm doing is thinning them down so that we can start developing the root system and the leaf. And then we do a final replate where I put about 30 to 35 in a flask and grow them up till they get about that high in the flask. And then we take them out and put them in plug trays. And the plug trays isn't that sweet? Look at the roots. Okay? And this plant is already 2.5, 3 years old.
Wow.
From the time we sowed the seed. So when you're talking a small seed, you gotta give it a chance to get up there to size. And what I love to see is the roots. And the neat thing about what we've gotten to is, if you've noticed, our pots are opaque, but if you look, you can see the roots. And the first thing that we get is, how often do I water? Well, when the roots are this color, it's time to water. Because as soon as you water them, they turn vibrant green. Notice that they're an opaque or a light green here, they need to be watered. When they turn vibrant green, they're done. Until they turn back to this color again, you don't have to do any watering with them. We find that we fertilize with water-soluble fertilizer every other time we water. And that produces a strong plant. These plants get the same thing. And this is ready now. What Tony will do is take this sphagnum peat moss off This is just sphagnum moss, I'm sure you've heard of it before, and discard it because it wears out in about a year and a half's time. And then he'll pot this up in a 4-inch pot, and within 9 to 10 months to a year, it'll come into flower. And then from there, which is these are the first one, in fact, here's one here just making one, so you see how they develop. And look at the roots, and look at the pot. See all the roots? And that's what you want to see. So many times, in the course of growing these, people say, well, how do you water them? Huh? Flush. I mean, when you go out with a hose to water your plants around the house, you go like this. And that's all you do. The water soaks down and flushes the plant. For whatever reason, a lot of folks think, well, to water these, you take them in, put them in a bowl, let them set for 20 minutes. So when they soak, problem is when they soak, the media gets so soaked, it never dries out. Plants lose their roots, they rot off, and I'm sure some of you probably have seen some of the rotting. They just turn black and smell bad. And so watering is flushing it on, because all you're doing with watering is, one, bringing on nutrition and flushing out the waste product that the root puts out in the system, okay? And other than that, a nice east or westerly or southern exposure. They do not take direct sun. They take indirect light. In the greenhouse, we shut off 54% of the light with the black shade cloth that's on the top, and that's all they need. And a good light. And if you don't have that situation, a lot of people get a fluorescent tube or with 2 lights in it, and suspend it about 12 inches above the foliage and run it for 12 to 14 hours a day, and they grow just fine. And the only reason that they don't flower in some instances in a home is because you keep the temperature consistent. And what we like to do in the greenhouse, today it'll probably get up, even though it's cool outside, the sun coming in, it's going to warm up to 75 or 80 degrees in that greenhouse. But at night it drops off to 50, and that scares them, sets on the flower spikes. So we're setting hundreds of flower spikes every night. And then they grow up and do this and bloom, and they're just exciting. I love seeing this because this is our breeding that we have come up with, and the good Lord has really sent us some beautiful, beautiful flowers of some of the, and you'll see some of those when you go in. We got pictures of them out there of some of our hybrids that have won national awards, and we have been blessed, and we have over 100 national awards, and so on and so forth. I became a judge in 1998. I did my study. It takes 6 years to become an orchid judge. I started in 92, and my wife thought I'd lost my mind. She said, why in the H would you want to go back and do all that study and write papers and this, that, and the other thing? And I said, well, just want to. So I did. Does that mean I know everything? No. When you have 35 to 50,000 species of orchids scattered worldwide, I'm lucky if I know 50 or 75 by name. But that's why I have research books to look at them, and when we judge them, we get that out, and so on and so forth. And now I've been a judge so long, I'm a senior judge, for crying out loud. Going, what? Anyway, orchids like to be handled. When we judge them, we people. No, touch them, because they like to be handled so they can be looked at, and so on and so forth. And it's the full and round and colorful. And right now we're producing colors that we've not seen before, oranges and greens and I mean, like, we never thought we'd ever see anything like this. And that color down there, it's amazing. And you'll see, we don't have many in flower in the greenhouse right now. Probably 60 or 70 is about it, but that might be enough eye candy for you.